afternoon. I'm very glad to be here and present you a little bit about the life or the world of ratings. As you already realized, the capital markets have two dimensions. One is the equity side with IPOs. The second one is the debt side. And speaking about ratings, we mean actually only the debt side, because ratings are expressions of a creditworthiness, so the capability of an entity to be able to repay the debt that it takes on. When I looked up Fitch-rated Baltic companies, it turned out that the issuances are quite substantial, because the average issuance of a company is about 300 million euro for a tenor of 3 years on average. And the companies who issue the bonds are mostly rated with a single B or double B, which means that a sub-investment grade, which of course impacts the coupon payments they have to pay to the note or bondholders. And they vary substantially, because the lowest coupon was, I think, 2.8, and the highest of the issuances that are now on the market here in the Baltic states, even 9.5. So the next panel is about state-owned companies. And the question here is, do the investors treat state-owned companies differently? Do they give them a premium, for example, larger amounts that can be absorbed by the market, or maybe longer tenors or more favorable risk margins, which means coupon payments? This is the question, the crucial question actually, even when taking the decision about entering the capital markets. I would like to introduce you to a Fitch concept, how it looks like at Fitch with the rating of state-owned companies, taking into account that behind the company is an owner, a capable owner, who might help the company to serve the debt. And I would like to introduce you to the way we derive that rating that includes this support factor. So I give you an overview in a nutshell how the criteria works. We call it government-related rating criteria, because we think that a government-rated entity must not necessarily be 100% owned by the government, but it can be also just controlled by an upper company or entity. So we look beyond the ownership factor and concentrate also on the factual control, decision about the operation, strategy, debt of the company. We think also that we shouldn't limit ourselves also to governments in the sense of sovereign, because we can actually go with the governments down to a lower administrative layer, which is local and regional governments. And we also treat municipalities, for example, as governments for municipal companies. In the scope of our consideration, there are different kinds of companies with different missions. We have, of course, public finance companies, which, when you think, starting with state-owned, can be welfare funds, or financial vehicles, or national railways, social security providers, hospitals that are not for profit, down to municipal transportation companies, for example. We speak and consider also the support for commercial company ratings and also their infrastructure products. And when we think particularly about state ownership, then we think about companies that are in the defense sector, aviation sector, oil and gas or energy sector. So here we can expect that the owner may support the company. And last but not least, we also think about non-banks financial institutions, because here also the support can play a role. What do we think is the support? So we think that the support starts already with the consideration what the government would lose if a company defaults on its liabilities, primarily on its debt. And here we think that the government will consider if it makes sense to let the company default, because maybe it will be not able to provide any services any longer, or maybe the access to a technology vital for the government or a key asset will be stopped. But, and not least, we think also about the consequences for the government itself if a company defaults, and also what would happen to other governmental companies. If this may impact maybe the access to capital markets, or maybe it can impact the coupon payments for the issued debt. When we speak about support, we also do not take into account ordinary support, because this is actually counted in the standalone credit profile of a company. We think about real extraordinary support, and there is a large catalog of instruments that can be treated as the support. You have it on the slide on the left-hand side. It starts with equity injections or a favorable tax regime, or the strongest kinds of support we take into consideration is a guarantee for the debt. So what we ask ourselves when deriving the rating of such a government-related company is, first of all, how likely it is that this company would be in a financial distress without any support. Then we also consider what kind of support could be provided by the government, and also if the government is capable of providing such a support. And all these three considerations flow into the concept of rating government-related entities. This is a four-step process. The first process is to assign a standalone credit profile to the company. Second, we look at the credit quality of the government itself. Third, we try to assess and quantify the support. So we take out elements of support, qualitative, but we try to translate it into scores from 0 to 60. Then in the fourth step, we combine all together and get at the end a recommended rating for the company. I will not concentrate on the government rating. This is in most cases known. Only shortly about the standalone credit profile. We have methodologies that allow us to derive standalone credit profiles depending on the missions and activities of the companies. Here we have three groups of companies. Those are all companies that Fitch rates in the Baltic states. In blue are companies that are commercially driven. Red, 11 group is, in our perception, a non-bank financial institution. And we have also a financial vehicle of the Lithuanian state, which we treat as a public mission company. So, coming to the framework of assessing and quantifying the support, we look at two support factors. One is the responsibility of the government to take on responsibility for its company. And secondly is the incentive, so the willingness to support the company in case of default. These two factors together can reach a maximum of 60 points. And the 60 points will premium the company then when deriving the rating of the company. But we have also two special cases. One of it, special case means that we do not have to derive the standalone credit profile, but we are sure that the support is virtually certain, and we can equalize the rating of such company with the rating of the government. And the first situation is when the government guarantees at least 75% of the debt issuance of the company over the rating horizon. And when we speak rating horizon, we think about the next 5 years or even beyond that. And here fits very well the financial vehicle from Lithuania, or BEVIC, which has a rating for its EMTN program equalized with the rating of the Lithuanian state due to the fact that the program is guaranteed by the Lithuanian state. Second situation is maybe rare on the market here, but it's very common in France, where the legal entity itself has a status, legal status tantamount to a guarantee. So a few words about these two factors. Each of these support factors are divided also into sub-factors. Under the responsibility to support, we understand the support obligation which may result out of the legal framework, the ownership itself, the company's bylaws, and also here we also look for an evidence of support in the future, in the past, because I think if the government took over the duty to support the company in the past, even if it was not obliged to do it, it's a good sign to incorporate potential support of the government into the company's rating. The incentive to support is more forward-looking. It focuses on the damage default of the company could do in respect of provision of services, access to key assets, but also in regard of reputation and the impact on the financials of the government and other government-related entities, as, for example, a more difficult or more expensive access to the capital markets. When we think about those support factors, we say only it can be strong or very strong, because we think that only in this situation the likelihood of support is given. When there are 20 reasons that are only moderate, they are rather the evidence that the linkage and the willingness to support is modest, and we do not count it at all. We also think that the incentives to support, so this forward-looking element of the support factors has more weight, so we double the number of points that we assess to the incentive of support factor. In the end, we have a table that looks very complicated, but I will explain in a minute how it works. On the left-hand side, the left-hand side column shows the distance between the company's standalone credit profile and the government's rating. And it's expressed in notches, number of notches between them two. The next column show actually the approach and classify the assessment of support into groups. The group A, it's a virtually certain support. The group G is actually no support considerations. And this impacts, of course, the way we derive the rating of the company. When the support is certain, we actually start with a top-down approach when we take the rating of the government and notch down by a certain number of notches to the rating, proposed rating for the company. In the opposite case, we actually rely on the standalone credit profile of the company and derive from that the rating of the company. So to show you how it works and that it's not that complicated, I provide you with an example from my field of activities. I am working in international public finance, and our companies have public missions to fulfill, so you can imagine that the standalone credit profiles are quite low, and we can assume that they are in the single B category. And let's also assume that the government has the typical rating of triple B. Let's also assume, you see it in the box on the bottom, that the support factors and sub-factors are assess the way that we have two very strong, one strong assessment, and in one case we do not assess that there is a really supportive attitude of the government in this respect. So when we sum up the scores, we get 40 points for the assessment of the support, which means that support is, in our view, extremely likely. And what does it mean? When we take a fragment of the notching table, you will see that the distance between our company and our government is 6 notches. So it's the line, the row. And the support is extremely likely, so it's the group B. And the lines cross at -1. What does -1 mean? -1 means that we have a very strong support attitude of the government, so we think we can apply the top-down approach, starting with the rating of the company, with the rating of the government, and take this -1 as the notching between the government's rating and the suggested rating for the company, which in this case would be BBB-, so far away from the standalone credit profile of single B. We, of course, rate also sovereigns in the Baltic states. We rate also the city of Tallinn, which also can be a government for a municipal company. And as you can see, the ratings are in the single A category. So if there is a support for a company, we have even a higher level from that we can notch down to the rating of the company. So there is quite a lot of potential to the assessment here. So this was actually the concept in a nutshell. We are currently in the process of revamping the criteria because we worked with the criteria for a couple of years and had some observations and also found that some ways of describing the assessments could be more transparent and more readable. So we are revamping the criteria now. The criteria are accessible under the QR code. And we have now an exposure draft period that ends in October. The exposure draft period is for you as market participants, because we would like to ask you to read the exposure draft of the criteria and comment on it or suggest something or raise questions to allow us to readjust maybe the criteria and make them better. So if you have some observations, please use and send your comments to the mail address that is on this slide. We expect that if no big changes happen to the criteria wording anymore, that this criteria will come into force from actually January 2024. So I think I stop here because I know that the next panel needs a little bit of time because there's a lot to discuss. I would like also to encourage you to ask questions. We as Fitch have a stand here outside, so after the panel I'm open to answer any of your questions. Thank you very much for your attention.